7 different things that you can do to trigger a woman to chase you, and they have nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with being good looking or any of these things that guys think that they need. They think like
7 different things, right? Immediately, it's got that curiosity. This has created something called a curiosity gap. What's up, folks? Rob here. In today's video, we are going to be reacting to Dan Bilzerian's coaching program, which is called Sigma Society, and why it has generated a bit of heat at the moment because people, particularly on this Reddit thread, are calling Dan out for using a bit of manipulation, unethical, shady persuasion tactics, and seemingly it has annoyed a fair amount of marketers here. So we're going to break it down. We're going to look at what Dan is doing right on his funnel, how he's setting it up and everything. We're going to look at like what is seemingly unethical as well. And also look into the studies of scarcity and urgency, how that works and everything like that. So let's go through this Reddit thread here, and this is where it started. Dan Bilzerian looks busy. Found a sneaky detail in Dan Bilzerian's coaching program booking system. I was checking out Dan Bilzerian's new coaching program where you could book a call with his team after watching some mandatory videos. Being curious, I inspected the network requests during the booking process and found something interesting. The appointment booking URL has a parameter enable look busy equal true, and then it's got it on this link here, and if you can see, it says at the end enable look busy. What's more telling is that while the next available slot shows as a few months away, you can actually book for the next day by manipulating the request. They're artificially creating scarcity. I get why business use tactics like this. It creates FOMO and makes the service seem more exclusive, but it feels pretty dishonest to programmatically fake being booked up, especially for a coaching program that's supposed to be about authenticity and success. Just thought I'd share this little discovery. Pretty clever from a marketing perspective, but definitely on the shadier side of business practices. What do all of you think about these kinds of artificial scarcity tactics? And before we go into that, let's just look at some of the comments. Soccer Person says, please don't give Dan Bilzerian any of your money. Polygraph-net, who's a top 1% commenter, says, it's super sketchy and a massive red flag, so I would recommend you avoid Dan Bilzerian coaching program. What else are they lying about? Probably a lot. Owning a house, having an enterprise, having a job, says Dunny Winner. Bold King Cole says, did you really just walk through an industrial red flag production facility and spot a scrap of cloth on the floor and asking if that is a red flag? Some of those production flags also seem to have a very familiar wonky black cross on a white circle. Are those special flags, red flags? Oh wait, there's some tits. Never mind, everything is fine. This guy has smoked crack before he wrote that comment there. The fact that it's called enable look busy is funny enough to justify the red circle on the image. Tits, you say? What about ass? Is there ass? There seems to be a lot of hate on this thread for Dan Bilzerian, right? So let's actually take a look at his website and see what everyone is talking about. If we click into, this is Dan's website, Sigma Society, stop chasing, start choosing, learn to attract and keep the woman you want without needing looks or money. It seemingly is about some sort of dating program which Dan Bilzerian has set up, and let's take a read through it. Let's have a look through what he's saying. Dan Bilzerian's vision, the why. Guys get coaching for everything, skiing, golf, but never with women. Seems crazy because your golf swing won't determine if you have kids with a solid woman or if you end up with a fat nagging wife. Okay. Getting the right directions is critical if you don't want to waste your time and get unnecessary rejections. Just avoiding the mistakes 99% of guys make will transform your life. I'm so tired of seeing women manipulate and bitch around guys. They get cheated on, taken advantage of, too often ghosted. I feel like I needed to do this because I've spent the better part of my life focusing on feeding my sex addiction and learned a lot about the process, which is why I could tell you for a fact that so-called dating coaches out there don't know what the F they're talking about, Dan. And there's all these pictures of him surrounded by women on there, which is generating him massive social proof in the fact that it's positioning him as though he knows what he is talking about. And, you know, to be honest with you, I don't doubt it, because that is basically all that is Instagram is filled with right here. If you look at all this. Just women, 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 women. It seems almost inevitable that he would at some point position himself as, you know, a person who understands women and can help other men who are maybe not so fortunate in that regard, and tell them, you know, how they can repeat some of his success, right? So he outlines the solution here. Most guys think they can learn by doing and end up getting subpar results because women rarely give honest feedback as to why they don't want to date or sleep with you, and they don't always know themselves. This lack of feedback and bad results leads to a downward spiral, but with the right information, the cycle is reversed and momentum can immediately shift in your favor. And he's got several different guys here with a range of, testimonials, range of ages as well. Will, 29. I tried everything. It was tough in scarcity, but Dan has a genius level ability to understand attraction. Now, I literally just went on a date yesterday and was in the power position. My friends are like, holy shit, he's with a really cute girl. I tried applying just one attraction trigger with the result was wild. It's crazy how I went from chasing girls to this. Dan is the Hugh Hefner of our generation. I'm seeing results already. Girls are reaching out to me via Instagram. That's not happened before. Sergio, who's 55. So it's, first of all, looking at the level of social proof that he has on his website. It's very good, right? A lot of people have, you know, testimonials scattered everywhere rather than a neat little line where you could see results as well. And we could see that he's, you know, got his private jet in the background. He has got his FAQs down here. He's sat around women, which is the big promise of the program. And his catch line, his big one-liner is stop chasing, start choosing. So this is aimed at guys who have seemingly, you know, been stuck in the position of trying to chase women and they're not getting any real attention back. So going back to this thread, now we know a little bit more about the program. This guy is talking about that Dan is artificially increasing scarcity to drive demand of the need to book calls with Dan and his team so they can be sold into a program. So let's have a look, if we click into join now, what it looks like. So there doesn't seem to be, for me, any type of artificial scarcity here, but that's pretty specific, this appointment booking URL, so let's just take it as fact. So first things first, if we look at urgency and scarcity as a principle of persuasion, urgency, which is a form of scarcity, drives action. And that doesn't just mean for buying or, you know, selling things. If you think back to high school, if you're anything like me, you'll have probably been given homework or an assignment at some point and you'll have been given 2 weeks to do it. And throughout those 2 weeks, you could have easily broken down the task into manageable chunks, do a little bit, you know, 20 minutes on it this day, 20 minutes on it the next day. But if you're anything like me, you'll have probably left it until the night before, you know, the day before that is actually due in, and then out of nowhere, got this massive burst of energy to suddenly complete this assignment, and maybe you do have to stay up all night, but it gets done and it gets handed in the next day. And that right there is called urgency. And urgency is a form of scarcity, and basically what it means is that a limited time on something will drive demand to do something. So that's just an example of how that works in, you know, your day-to-day life. But if we look at scarcity, scarcity is even more powerful because it creates a limited number of things. And when something is in limited number or limited supply, what that implies is that other people can potentially buy that or get that as well, which creates this competition environment. And humans are very competitive creatures. So if you think about scarcity, it basically drilled into your brain in a persuasive nature from two angles. One, you've already got like kind of the urgency on the situation to take action, but secondly as well, you actually want to outcompete the other person and make sure somebody else doesn't get it as well. You want whatever that is. And it applies to booking slots. So what Dan has done here seemingly is create a false sense of scarcity to drive people to book calls. And they've done that by enabling an option on their funnel which says we need to look busy, right? We need to have certain slots taken, certain times of day that you can't book, right? And we're doing that because we don't want to seem overly available. When you appear overly available, there is no like urgency driving you to take an action. And the reason this works so much is that things which are in shorter supply or on urgent time frame, basically in the human mind, get perceived as more valuable. This isn't my opinion. There's an actual study which demonstrates this. Here's a study on the effects of supply and demand on ratings of object value, and it's by Warchel, Lee, Adewole, sorry guys if I didn't pronounce your name right, in 1975. And in this study there were 2 jars of cookies. Both of the cookies were absolutely identical. They were the same cookie. Both tasted exactly the same, they looked exactly the same, except in both of these jars, there was a different number of cookies. In jar 1, there was 10 cookies. In jar 2, there was 2 cookies. The participants were asked which jar had the most desirable cookies in, the most valuable cookies, the most attractive cookies. And basically, even though the quality of each of them did not differ, even though the taste didn't differ, the participants rated that the 2 cookies in jar 1 were actually far more appealing than the cookies in jar 2, which is where they had 10, even though they were the same cookies, same flavor, same lookalike. And the only reason for this is because when something is in fewer quantity or on a more urgent time frame, we judge that thing as more valuable. So when we come back to the question of, like, is this a shady marketing tactic? What do you think of practices from businesses that do things like this? I do have to say, most businesses, unfortunately, do practice things like this. They will create false urgency, false scarcity, and they will do this in the hope that you take action from it. Most businesses do it. Doesn't mean it's right that they do it, because there are ethical ways to put urgency and scarcity in your marketing without, like, basically artificially inflating it. One way is to do program launches instead. So that is one of the most effective ways, because basically you can say to your audience or your email list or the people who are visiting your website, hey, look, my program is only open from the 10th of Feb to the 17th of February. In that 7-day period, if you don't buy then, I'm not sure again when it's going to be open, which might be a realistic scenario. You only want to take in cohorts of people at one time. When you do something like that, you on average see quite a big % jump in how many people actually buy in that time frame, because urgency and scarcity are automatically involved in a very ethical way. You could also say as well, hey, I'm going to do a coaching program, but rather than have the time frame, the little time gap of when you're going to open it for, you could say, I'm only looking to take on X number of people in that time, which again sprinkles in the cognitive bias of urgency and scarcity, making it more appealing, and it's perfectly ethical. If you have got a booking system like Dan has got here, you can artificially, make yourself look busy, or you could just give your closers a day off on certain days or allocate them to other tasks. Like, we don't take calls on Tuesday morning, or we don't take calls on Wednesday night because you're doing something else. You're working your CRM and sending things out at that point there, which is an ethical way of doing it rather than like tricking the end user. However, I've got a feeling that they have actually seen this thread and removed that bit of code from it, because now the call booking seems to be laid out perfectly fine, right? Is the 30th of December today, and it seems to have all the available time slots there. Another ethical way of generating urgency or scarcity when you have your booking calendar is to only, which is what they've done here, only limit it for the next few days. I found from the research that I've done, where I have been booking calls for myself, for my own business, over the last few years, and also when I've been consulting with persuasion for various different companies, I found that if you have your calendar open more than 4 days in advance, meaning that people can book pretty much any time into the future, the people who do book out of that 4-day window, let's just say Dan's calendar is open all the way down to the end of January here, right? And you can book any time in that period. The people who book after those 4 days, 90% of them no show for the people who book outside of that window. Because what happens is the iron goes cold when they've got a problem, they have decided to take action on it, and then they've suddenly got a call in 3 weeks' time and they forget, right? The problem's not that painful anymore. They've kind of moved on a little bit in life. And also as well, if you think about it, if they really have got no time other than in 2 weeks' time, is it really that much of a problem to them? It's not really a burning problem, in which case they probably won't close anyway. However, the people who book within that 4-day window, generally 90% of the time they will show up because they want the problem dealt with right then. So my recommendation to create that urgency, to create that scarcity ethically, is to do exactly what Dan has done here, which is just open that calendar up for just a few day period so that people they have to find a time. Basically, if they want to speak to you, they have to find a time within that 4-day period to actually speak to you, right? Let's take a look now onto Dan Bilzerian's page, which is the VSL, which is a video sales letter that you're supposed to watch before you book onto any type of call with them. And the purpose of VSL letters is to basically warm your appetite a little bit, point out the problems, make you nod along, do a few key bits of persuasion as well, which will help you then book a call. Video sales letters, by the way, are not inherently unethical. They serve a purpose, and that purpose is to qualify the buyer and also make sure the buyer understands what they are going to be getting as well, what pain points it's going to solve. We can see here that Dan's offer for, his tagline is Dan Bilzerian's secret method for attracting the women you want without risking rejection or needing looks or money. That's a compelling offer line because it's identified 2 of the common complaints, or at least I imagine 2 of the common complaints. I mean, these certainly were my common complaints when, before I was in a long-term relationship of not wanting to get rejected or worrying that, the people who do really well are just really good looking, or the people who do really well just have loads of money. So it's dealing with some common objections from people. So those types of people won't dismiss instantly this idea. Let's watch this VSL.
7 different things that you can do to trigger a woman to chase you, and they have nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with being good looking or any of these things that guys think that they need. They think
7 different things, right? Immediately it's got that curiosity. This has created something called a curiosity gap. And a curiosity gap is basically the gap between us not knowing something and us wanting to know something, and then us actually figuring something out. So he said these 7 different things. It's created this open loop. And so now you've got to watch the video and be like, well, 7 different things? What are these 7 different things? What does he think these 7 different things are? I just want to point out as well that this bar at the bottom was going very fast at the start, indicating that this video is probably only 30 seconds or a minute long, but it's drastically slowed down. Now you're hooked in, and it's foot and door you because, first of all, when you're watching this video, you're like, anyone can spare 30 seconds to watch a video, watch a VSL, but now you're hooked in, the line's going to slow down. I actually bet this video is much longer than just 30 seconds. Watch the line.
I have to have this, I have to have this, and they don't. If you know the tweaks, it's actually a lot easier than guys think.
They call him the king of Instagram, Dan Bilzerian.
It's Dan Bilzerian.
I salute you, sir.
Hi, Dan. Nice.
You see that? All these authority figures, well-known public figures saying nice things about him. You've got Logan Paul, you've got Joe Rogan as well. This is called authority by association. So in case you didn't know who Dan Bilzerian is, and it's probably very hard that you didn't know who he was at this point if you're a guy, right? But you will notice that he's now got these introductions from these various other key figures who are very popular themselves, who all seem to look to him as if, he's a highly respected person as well. So this is authority by association.
Nice to meet you in person. You have an image, so I have some questions.
Okay.
You've had the parties, the girls, the cars, the fame. Where are you at today?
I'm just at a place where I want to do things that make me happy. I don't get that much enjoyment out of buying a Ferrari or, buying $1 million watch. When I help people out, that's one of the few times that I'm just like, I don't know, I feel good, I'm stoked. But I also just feel like there's a big problem. There's this whole attack on masculinity, just bad. It's bad for dating, it's bad for women.
Okay, so what do you...
Can anybody notice what strategical thing he has done in this video here? It might not be too obvious to you, but if you think about the heat the red pill space gets, the heat is that all of them instantly, whether they are or whether they're not, instantly get assumed as misogynistic, and they get grouped in that category then. So what he's strategically done, and I don't know if this is deliberate, but I think it's a clever move anyway, is he's got a woman interviewing him. Not a bunch of guys sat around in a podcast room all talking about this, because he's got a woman interviewing him. You know, it's unlikely that the techniques and things that he's going to teach are going to be toxic, which there's a group of guys out there who will avoid information because they don't want to come off as toxic. So he's got that woman who's interviewing him. He doesn't seem to be, have you seen on some of the shows, they'll just like berate women and be like, you know, blah, 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 get out of this podcast room. He's not doing that though. So he's reaching a broader audience. Very clever, in my opinion, if that was a deliberate move.
When you're chasing something, you're not thinking about, do I want this? You're thinking about, how do I get this? And when you're thinking about how do you get something, you're not qualifying it, right? The moment I hit on you and I tell you how great you are and how pretty your eyes are, whatever that I tell you, you're looking at me from the perspective of, do I want this guy? Is he good enough? Like, what's wrong with him? It's kind of the same way as if you go to a house and a house is for sale. Okay, I want an inspection. I want to make sure I don't make a bad purchase. Versus if you're at an auction and 20 are bidding on this house and you really like it, you're not thinking about what's wrong with the house. You're like, how do I beat these other 20 guys?
You see what he's talking about here? He's explaining a lot of things which shows he actually has a deep understanding of psychology. So he's talking about, what's he talking about here? He's talking about the topic we have just covered, what this whole video is about, right? Urgency, scarcity. And he's talking about, you know, the example of basically trying to buy a home, except you're competing with all the other people who also want this home. This subtle mindset changes from, hey, you know, do I want this home, to now, how do I get this home? And the reason that happens is generally humans, this is what you learn when you get into marketing, you get into psychology, like I've done for various different companies, is that humans have a tendency to, once they have basically committed to something, committed to the idea, like I may be interested in this house, they will then be consistent with those beliefs afterwards. It's called the commitment and consistency principle. And humans generally will be consistent with what their previous actions are. And all these different cognitive biases, the urgency, the scarcity of the situation, the social proof of the situation, now have this impact on the brain, which drives demand, causes the person to then chase. And that's what he's talking about. You know, when I look at, there's a lot of different influencers and entrepreneurs that I see, and I react to various different videos in marketing, look at various different psychological persuasion techniques that they use to get you to buy. And when I look at them, there is a lot of them, and I've spoke to some of them myself personally. There's some of them where I'm like, you don't understand this persuasion stuff. You don't actually understand the psychology stuff. You just seem to be doing it either by luck on a particular thing which has went viral, or like you're just that type of person who thinks in that particular way, but you're not thinking at it from like a persuasive perspective. And it's always surprising to me that some people are very good at it naturally. But I'm looking at Dan here and I'm instantly getting the vibes from what he's saying that he actually really does understand human psychology, because he's describing these things and how basically, you know, buying pressure is built and action is taken, and it's done through measures and principles such as urgency and such as scarcity and things like that. So it's interesting stuff so far.
And so whether you're a short guy, whether you're a fat guy, whether you're a broke guy, like all these things disappear if the woman is in pursuit. Something can't chase you if you're chasing it.
Were you ever scared to approach girls?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I was like scared to talk to hot girls. It was one of those things where like me and my buddies would be like, oh, you gonna go talk to her? No, you go talk to her, you know? It's like then you go up and you get rejected and then all your friends laugh at you. I think that's a very common thing.
So you're still talking about the problem now, identifying the problem. They've talked about fat people, you know, regular people. They've covered, if you watched, they've covered a whole variety of people. And the reason why is, if you're watching this video with a broad enough audience, you will start to think, hey, he's covered me there. There's a funny bit of human psychology, and I don't know if it's got an official term, I'm gonna have to look it up afterwards, but it was a term that was coined by a guy that taught me a lot about marketing, which was a guy called Ramit Sethi, and he called it the special snowflake syndrome. And special snowflake syndrome is that people all assume that they are individual, they don't react like each other. They think completely independently. And really, if you look over, a general population size, you will see there are patterns and trends to how humans make decisions, how people make decisions as well. And people just aren't that different. Ultimately, the same things gets us all going. The same things makes us angry. The same things, drives us to take action. And special snowflake syndrome is that people actually assume that they don't work like that at all. They assume that they all operate independently and they're all in charge of their own thoughts. And so common problems, what happens when people are selling coaching programs or selling some sort of service is, even though the service might seem like it's marketing to a lot of people, the person who's been marketed to might be like, will this actually work for me though, as a person who is 6'1", 32 years old, special snowflake syndrome. So in my opinion, I don't know for sure, but in my opinion, they are taking some time to actually define each type of person that this marketing will be applicable to.
It's like I had a lot of the shitty feelings, like I said, which is probably what motivated me to make a strong change and fix this problem. I think there's two roads that you can go down when you have experiences like that, and one of them is quitting and just feeling like I'm not attracted to women and it's not going to work for me. And I think that's a path a lot of guys lately are taking. And I think the other road that you can go down is figure out how to make yourself more attractive and do something about it. And that's what I did. As a man, like, you can make yourself more attractive. And I think that's one of the things that, like, guys just don't realize. They think what I'm born with is what I'm stuck with, and like I'm either attractive or I'm not.
So you notice how he did that two route there that you can pick, and the first route is basically you can go down route 1 and not change any of this because you believe it can't be changed and you could just end up hating women instead. Or route 2, which is the more preferable route, which is the solution which he offers, is you could go down this second route and you can improve yourself. A lot of people don't realize that they can actually improve themselves to a point where they become more attractive. But you will see, like, a lot of coaching programs have these two paths. As path 1, do it all on your own, try and spend the time and figure out all the hours. Path 2, do it with somebody who has got proven results in this area, who can just show you the step-by-steps. You save time, you save money, it's actually cheaper in the long run. And it's interesting how that works because, first of all, you need to educate the people that there can be a change here, the people who are watching this. There can be a change which comes out of this. It's really hard to sell to an audience who don't actually believe there is any power for them to take control themselves. So you have to establish, first of all, that they can, in fact, take control themselves. I think this is a very well put together VSL.
Trigger her to chase. What does that mean exactly?
There's 7 different things that you can do to, like, trigger a woman to chase you, and they have nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with being good looking or any of these things that guys think that they need. Because when you're chasing her, she's looking at you with this magnifying glass, focusing on your flaws, focusing on the reasons why you may not be good enough. Because, like, when you can get something, what's the natural next reaction is like, do I want it? I know I can get it. Now, do I want to have it? It's human nature, right? There are subtle ways that you can do it. Like, for instance...
Yeah, so interesting point about what he said there, and this applies to marketing, it applies to literally what we were just talking about, is that things which we think we may have a certain challenge in getting because perhaps there's not enough time available to get it, or perhaps you're looking to buy a house and suddenly there's 20 other people buying a house, the value for that thing shoots upwards. You perceive it as very valuable. But the opposite of that is where there is no urgency and no scarcity to actually get something. That means your value drastically lowers. And it's a spectrum, right? It's not like you have urgency or scarcity or you don't have urgency or scarcity. You can have, like, sprinkled in little bits of things which make you perceive things as more valuable. And it works in human nature, which is exactly what he's talking about for his coaching program. It also works in marketing as well. It drives you to do your homework the night before an exam or the night before, like, your homework's due in or whatnot. And it drives to all sorts of different buying behaviors.
Neil Strauss. He was on a TV show with Jessica Alba. He asked her, other than your looks, what's good about you?
So if you're beautiful, so what? You got lucky in the gene pool, right? So if I was to ask you to name 3 things about yourself that would make me want to get to know you better, and none of them can be about your looks or what you do, what would they be?
I'm loyal,
right,
reliable,
right,
and hardworking.
That's awesome. Guys are always trying to sell themselves to women. Instead, you kind of got to flip the script, make someone start selling themselves to you.
By just asking that one...
It's interesting. I remember reading that book, The Game by Neil Strauss, when I was like 19 years old, and it had so much heat for that book because basically, like, it's frowned upon for men to talk about kind of dating and dating practices, but you would see in magazines at the time women's tips, you know, for women dating published all the time, like just in regular mainstream magazines, like make him wait 10 minutes before you text him back or before you even view his message, and all these little different tips and techniques. But when a guy released it, it came with all this heat, and basically it didn't think he'd get cancelled, but I think he pivoted off that niche just because people view things differently, and when something gets so much heat, like, you risk obviously being cancelled and things like that. But I remember reading that book, and it definitely helped me with my confidence earlier on in life, right? Because it showed me that like Dan has just said here, which is why I know this marketing is most likely working, it showed me that there was actually an option for me to improve who I was as a person. Because before that, I just assumed that you're born with who you are at that moment. Some people are good at things, some people are not good at things, and you can't really improve. But that actually showed me that you could improve.
That was an important business call or whatever, and they're overassuring the girl. They're letting the girl know that they don't have other options. And I think you should be doing the exact opposite.
Letting the girl know that you don't have other options. Think about back to his call funnel, booking a call funnel. He is letting you know by this little bit of a script, which makes his calendar look busy, that he has other options. So when you go in to book a call, what does one thing he doesn't look like? Doesn't look needy, right? Because that adds into the power of his marketing.
I know for a fact this works because I've seen it work with my own two eyes, and I've seen it work on myself before I was famous, before I was rich, you know, and I've coached 1,000 guys. I had one guy that made small tweaks on his Instagram, and in 1 week he had 9.
One of the objections that people would give Dan is like, this would work for you because you're rich and you're famous, right? And what's he doing here? He is subtly handling those objections by saying, this worked for me before I was rich, before I was famous. It's repeatable in other people. One of the best psychological principles that you could do is basically work out what potential objections your customers are going to have to you, because they are going to have objections regardless of how good your product is, and see if you can handle those up front, so that they know this information going in and they are disarmed, which is exactly what he's done there. And it was quite clever.
Girl, things that I like, but I can't point to one legit, like, the guru for dating.
That was very clever there, because he's established his authority. He's put himself in a position of power in this video sales letter here. But not only that, he has then disqualified all of his competition and basically answered the question of, why should I pick Dan for the coaching program and not all these other people? And he's disqualified them by saying, hey, look, these guys just don't know what they're talking about. At the end of the VSL there, get access now, limited seats available. I see that again, that scarcity. What would help Dan here is if he put a specific reason exactly why limited seats are available in a market at the moment. The whole of the buyer market at the moment, in my opinion, is incredibly skeptical. So we need reasons why things are limited, right? If it's an online program, why exactly is that limited? If you're selling an ebook, why is that limited copies available? Unless you say specifically, and there's nothing wrong in saying this, hey, you know what? I don't want to take on any more than 100 people this month, or whatever, right? That is a good way to continue the level of trust that you have established with your already existing audience. Get the secrets. What you get, a 12-week program showing you exactly how to make yourself more attractive through Dan's detailed processes. You learn all his best advice, tips, and secrets. 12 most powerful triggers. You get a community, all these different bonuses. This has got some master level marketers behind it. And I can tell it's got some master level marketers behind it because they're hitting on reward bias, they're hitting on authority bias, they're answering people's objections. I'm very impressed with it, to be honest with you. So that was a longer discussion than I thought it was going to be, but I thought it makes sense to really dive deep on why urgency works, why scarcity works, what's the psychological studies backing it as well. What would I say to answer this question? What do I think about all these kinds of artificial scarcity tactics. What I would say is, to be honest, I don't really agree with them. A lot of people do them. There are other ways of reaching the same end result, but are they effective? Absolutely effective. But we can also see, going through Dan's funnel here, he creates FOMO in a bunch of different ways here. He is giving you exclusive, information which is not widely shared. You can continue living the life of a person who doesn't know that they can improve themselves or doesn't know that the secret tactics, all of which is scarcity and urgency type marketing as well, loss aversion as well. And this stuff right here is very effective. It's not just going through all of his content and going through his funnel here. It's not just that artificial scarcity that he apparently, he doesn't do it anymore by the looks of it, applied on his calendar at some point. Now he's actually got real things in place. So what I would say is that at the moment, he seems that he isn't actually doing too many of these tricks. Yes, he is marketing to you, but I can't see anything from what he's doing that is actually unethical. I think when people hear the word persuasion, they instantly think, hey, this has got to be really unethical. This is, but really persuasion is just a tool, as is a hammer. It depends how you use that tool. Yes, I would say having the look busy option enabled on there is a bit shady, right? But he's got lots of other relevant things which probably counterbalance that, to be honest with you. I don't know, let me know what you think, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and this breakdown, and hopefully you found it interesting as well. Take it easy and see you in the next video.